Hello and welcome to the latest edition of As the Blade Turns. My name is Dave Leese, and for those of you who are new here, please subscribe below and remember to smash that like button. This episode is the beginning update on Russia, Russian figure skating, and the Russian return to the Olympic Games. Earlier this month, the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee backed the idea to include Russian and Belarusian athletes at the 2024 Paris Summer Olympics, as long as they don't compete under their nation's flags or in their color, said Suzanne Lyons, chair of the USOPC Board of Directors. International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach said last week that he wants Russian and Belarusian athletes to be able to participate at the Paris Games, even if the Russian war in Ukraine continues. Bach's statement marked a sharp reversal from earlier this year when the IOC called on sports federations to exclude Russian and Belarusian athletes from the international events because of Russia's invasion. The U.S. supported that ban, which also came after years of mounting frustration over Russian doping scandals. The reversal sets up potential conflicts with some of the sports federations that still ban athletes from competitions. Those federations, not the IOC, typically run the processes and events through which athletes qualify for the Olympics. The USOPC position is also a reversal of its previous stance, which had been harshly critical of Russian athletes competing following a doping scandal at the 2022 Beijing Olympics involving Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva. The U.S. figure skating team that finished second in the team event in Beijing still hasn't received its medals. The change follows a summit at the IOC headquarters in Lausanne, Switzerland, that included about 24 of the world's highest-ranking Olympic officials. The entire summit group, which included top IOC officials and heads of federations for swimming and gymnastics, agreed to move forward to bring back Russian and Belarusian athletes as neutrals, said Lyons, the U.S. official who attended the summit. She said that the pivot is necessary to preserve Olympic ideals of athlete inclusion despite the sometimes objectionable or even violent actions of their governments. Even though this leaves a pretty foul taste in your mouth, to look like you're sliding back on this, it is really essential to the movement, Lyons said. We very much still stand with the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian athletes. The only National Olympic Committees present at the meetings were from U.S., China, and Russia. Absent were all other prominent Olympic committees from European nations, representing countries that have taken in large numbers of Ukrainian refugees, rallied around economic sanctions against Russia, and scrambled to prepare for winter after being cut off from Russian natural gas supplies. In a sign of anticipated pushback from European countries, Olympic officials discussed holding some Paris 2024 trial events that normally might have been held in Europe, thousands of miles away under the umbrella of the Olympic Council of Asia, Lyons said. Discussions are preliminary, so the timing and logistics of those events aren't yet known. The OCA didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Lyons said that the IOC sanctions, including no flag, anthem, colors of any identification of the countries, for Paris 2024 would be stricter than the ones at the 2022 Beijing Winter Games. Russia was being sanctioned at those Olympics for a state-sprawling, state-sponsored doping scheme. But athletes nonetheless wore Russian, red, white, and blue, waved a flag inspired by the Russian standard, and competed under the name the Russian Olympic Committee. The U.S. is supportive of finding a way for the athletes who have trained all their lives for this to be able to come back and compete, Lyons said, but we are very opposed to them coming back under their country's imprimatur at the moment while their governments are being sanctioned. The position is a marked departure from previous remarks by USOPC leadership, which made open and vocal criticisms of Russian participation after a doping firestorm at the 2022 Beijing Winter Games that denied U.S. figure skaters their medals from the team event. In an interview in early May, 2 months after the IOC had called on sports federations to exclude Russian and Belarusian athletes, USOPC Chief Executive Sarah Hirshland stopped short of saying whether she believed that the ban should extend through the 2024 Olympics. But, she said, there is no question that Russia needs to be sanctioned, and frankly, they are being sanctioned at the moment. Asked if she was basing her support for the Russian lockout on doping or on the invasion, she had a telling quip. Yes. Last February, in the invasion's immediate wake, the IOC recommended that sports federations and event organizers not invite or allow the participation of Russian and Belarusian athletes and officials in international competitions. Its reasoning, however, was narrow. It took the step first because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine days earlier had violated the Olympic truce, a United Nations resolution calling for peace during a roughly 2-month period surrounding each Winter and Summer Olympics and Paralympics. Second, officials at the Olympic and Paralympics, which opened days after Russia's invasion, feared clashes between athletes or officials, with emotions running high. As a practical measure, you had to separate everybody, Lyons said. And so we absolutely supported at that time banning them, certainly from the games, and from everything at that time. So what we talked about is the need for those protective measures the same? And the feeling is, while the catalyst for this is still present, which is obviously the invasion in Ukraine, the specific safety of athletes issue is not the same as it was. Now, she said, the larger risk to the Olympic movement is the actions that national governments have taken to deny visas to athletes from certain nations or put pressure on their athletes not to compete against those from certain nations. And that's very much a violation of the Olympic Charter, Lyons said. We don't want individual countries based on politics deciding who they or their athletes should engage with. So why is the USOPC suddenly reversing its stance on Russian participation at the Olympics, even as the doping case of Kamila Valieva remains in front of the Court of Arbitration for Sport and the war in Ukraine continues? What has changed? When talking to other Olympic reporters, a certain theory emerges that is even stronger than politics. Money. The Olympic movement is largely a media event put on by the American broadcaster NBC and its corporate sponsors who pay handily to advertise during the games. Every narrative requires both a hero and a villain. The Olympics rose to particular cultural prominence during the Cold War, with East meeting West. And while the Cold War officially ended, tensions between the United States and Russia have certainly not. Without Russian participation in the Games, who would the opponent for ratings be? And while the war in Ukraine is ostensibly the reason for banning Russia, the subject of doping is always included in the conversation. And while doping has been present in many sports, including Major League Baseball, one has to question if the organizations have ever truly taken a hard line. During the summer of 1998, it was known that Mark McGwire was taking androgen, among other unknown performance-enhancing drugs, after a journalist reported seeing the drug in his sports locker in open sight, which was then said to be a violation of unwritten sports journalism rules regarding the locker room. That summer, despite the rumors of doping by both Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, ticket sales and television ratings soared as the two athletes attempted to break the vaunted home run record. It was only later that it was confirmed that both athletes had indeed used performance-enhancing drugs during the entire period. It begs the question, does the International Olympic Committee really care about preventing the use of performance-enhancing drugs, or does it only care about the appearance of preventing the use of performance-enhancing drugs? What do you think? And will viewers actually turn off the Olympics if Russia is allowed to compete? Because if Russia is a villain who has been convicted of doping and of invading Ukraine, does it just make Russia an even bigger villain and the impulse to watch even greater? Russian sports minister Oleg Matysin said he hopes athletes from Russia can return soon following the lifting of the sanctions from the Court of Arbitration for Sport, citing optimism for reintroduction during talks at the recently held Olympic summit. However, the World Anti-Doping Agency made it clear the processes only began on the expiration of the CAS sanction, stressing the Russian anti-doping agency's non-compliance still remains a barrier for the country to compete freely at international competitions. And although an important step for Russian sport, the IOC recommends to ban athletes and officials from Russia and Belarus for their country's involvement in the invasion of Ukraine would need to change before a full reintroduction of athletes. The CAS decision, which saw an initial WADA ban of 4 years, was halved by the CAS appeal and prohibited Russian athletes from competing under the flag anthem and name of the country at international events, also restricting the nation from hosting major international events and sports administrators from holding positions if they were a Russian government official. This was in response to the cover-up of the state-sponsored doping program in the country. Matthiessen was hopeful of the flag and other symbols returning for the country in the near future. The CIS sanctions have been completed. All restrictions on Russian athletes have been lifted by this decision, he said, according to Russian state news agency TASS. We hope and do our best so that Russian athletes return to world sports with dignity and be able to perform under the Russian flag and anthem. For the duration of the sanctions, the Russian side fully implemented the CIS decision, including the fulfillment of financial obligations. The results of the recent Olympic summit in Lausanne confirm that an effective dialogue is the only way out of this situation. Our country has repeatedly confirmed the status of a reliable partner, demonstrating the highest level of holding major sporting events and providing serious competition to athletes at the Olympic Games and World Championships. Russia is now operating one of the most effective systems of measures to prevent doping in sports. Russian anti-doping legislation is fully consistent with the convention. This fact has been repeatedly confirmed by UNESCO and the Council of Europe. Although this ban being lifted is a welcome sign for Russians, RUSADA is still regarded as non-compliant with WADA, with this status allowing room to still prohibit the participation of athletes, not award hosting rights to the country, and ban their flag at events. RUSADA still remains under supervision, of which it pays WADA up to 6 site visits a year. WADA said that while it remains disappointed with the CIS decision and earlier expiration of the suspension, it would comply with the ruling. It added that RUSADA's compliance status would be reviewed. RUSADA's non-compliance with the World Anti-Doping Code is a separate process, which did not end on December 17th, said WADA in a press conference. In fact, it only began on that date. WADA management will initiate a comprehensive review to carefully assess whether RUSADA has met all the conditions of reinstatement as laid out in the CIS award. Once WADA management considers that all conditions have been met, it will refer the matter to the Independent Compliance Review Committee for its review. If the CRC agrees, it will make a recommendation to the WADA Executive Committee. Failure to meet the reinstatement conditions in full would lead to RUSADA's non-compliant status being maintained until such time as they have been met. WADA President Witold Banka said in a virtual audit in September that it still found a number of nonconformities. The IOC has recently welcomed Russian officials to the Olympic summit, suggesting a pathway could be implemented for participation at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games and a removal of its recommendations, despite the ongoing war. If this happens, RUSADA's non-compliance status would be even more significant. State Duma deputy and Turin 2006 Olympic speed skating gold medalist Svetlana Zhurova has said Ukraine should not be lobbying the removal of Russian figure skater and Olympic champion Anna Sherbakova from the International Skating Union Awards shortlist. Women's gold medalist Sherbakova is nominated, along fellow podium sitter Kaori Sakamoto from Japan, American men's star Nathan Chen, Japanese men's stars Yuma Kageyama and Shoma Uno, Japanese pairs duo Rika Miura and Ryuichi Kihara, Chinese pair Sui Wenjing and Han Kong, and ice dancing couple Gabriela Papadakis and Guillaume Cizeron from France. Sherbakova is the only Russian on the list, leading to the Ukrainian Figure Skating Federation sending a letter to the ISU demanding her removal from the Most Valuable Skater of the Year list. Zhurova hit back, saying this should not be allowed when speaking to Russian state agency TASS. They will put forward not such demands. The question is whether they will be heard, said Zhurova. Speaking objectively, Anna won Olympic gold. This is a fact that has nothing to do with the special operation. Although for Ukraine, it's all the same. They want to convince everyone that in the world now, everything is connected with the events that are taking place. The scary thing is that they are trying to make a scandal out of all topics, so that people follow their lead and decide that it is better to remove the Russians from everywhere so that there is no scandal. Sherbakova's win at the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics was overshadowed by the scandal surrounding the doping case of her teammate Kamila Valieva, who tested positive for trimetazidine before the Games. Alexandra Trusova, who won 3 Olympic golds in team synchronized swimming for her country, has presented a performance on the theme of sanctions against Russian sports. Her performance took place at the Show of Olympic Champions in synchronized swimming held in Moscow and began with a series of television news reports talking about sanctions against Russian sports before the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Russian athletes were forced to compete in Japan, where Trusova won the 3rd of her 3 Olympic golds as the Russian Olympic Committee due to sanctions imposed on the nation by the Court of Arbitration for Sport in response to its orchestrated doping program and subsequent attempts to cover it up. Her performance was accompanied by a video showcasing the country's athletes at Tokyo 2020 to the song I Won't Leave Halfway by Elka. The video concluded with shots of Trusova and her teammates as they claimed gold at Tokyo 2022. Russian athletes were unable to compete under their flag and anthem at Tokyo 2020, meaning Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1 was played instead of the country's national anthem when Trusova and her teammates won synchronized swimming gold. As well as team gold with the Russian Olympic Committee, Trusova also won golds in the same discipline at both the London 2012 and Rio 2016 Olympics. Trusova concluded her professional career following Tokyo 2020 and is now studying to be a film director, working in the Public Projects Department of the Presidential Administration of Russia. Russian Anti-Doping Agency Director General Veronika Lyuginova has disputed claims from the World Anti-Doping Agency that it failed to resolve the Kamila Valieva case promptly. WADA appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport in November, seeking a 4-year ban for the Russian figure skater after she was at the center of a doping scandal at the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics, exclusively revealed by Inside the Games. The then 15-year-old had tested positive for the banned substance trimetazidine in a sample on December 25th last year, but this was only reported by a WADA-accredited laboratory on February 8th after she helped the Russian Olympic Committee to gold in the team event at Beijing 2022. In confirming WADA's appeal to the CAS, President Witold Banka claimed that despite putting RUSADA under formal notice to resolve the Kamila Valieva case promptly, no progress was made. However, Lyuginova, who was appointed to her role as RUSADA Director General in December last year, disputed those suggestions. We do not agree with the claim that RUSADA was unable to organize the hearings on time, she told Russia's official state news agency TASS. Now everyone needs to be patient and not spread false information in the media. We have officially declared our position, namely our intention not to publicly disclose any details of the figure skater's case. We were guided by the fact that the disclosure of such information would not benefit any of the parties involved in the case. But the right of public disclosure remains with us, and when the final decision on the case is made, we will return to the issue. RUSADA did not delay the processing of any of the results at any stage. An investigation was carried out on the personnel who worked with the underage athlete. We were obliged to conduct it, and we always conduct an investigation in cases where the case concerns protected persons. The investigation was conducted within a reasonable time. It took place in cooperation with the WADA Investigation Department. WADA has not commented on Lyuginova's remarks as the case is pending. RUSADA justified its plans to keep its verdict in the Valieva case confidential by arguing she is a protected person under the World Anti-Doping Code, although WADA and the International Olympic Committee have urged it to make the details public. The medal ceremony for the team figure skating event from Beijing 2022 is yet to take place because of the failed drugs test. The United States were the second-best team, followed by Japan and Canada, and each would be bumped up a place if the ROC were to be stripped of its gold. Valieva was only cleared to compete in the women's singles event by the CAS after it opted against reimposing a provisional suspension, but she finished 4th after an error-strewn performance in the free skate. 2-year sanctions against Russia for a state-sponsored doping program ended earlier this month. WADA had initially prohibited Russian athletes from competing under the country's flag, anthem, and name, and restricted the nation from hosting major international events for 4 years. But this was reduced to 2 years by the CAS. However, WADA has said RUSADA remains non-compliant with the World Anti-Doping Code, describing it as a separate process. Kamila Valieva's performance as Wednesday Addams in the exhibition of the 2023 Russian Figure Skating Championships has gained considerable buzz and attention over the last week. American composer Danny Elfman, who wrote the music for the Wednesday series on Netflix, posted a video of Kamila Valieva's program on Instagram. The musician tagged Valieva and posted a link to the full recording of the performance. The figure skater skated as Wednesday at the demonstration performances at the Russian Championships in Krasnoyarsk. The performance has been shared on numerous blogs, websites, and social media platforms. 1979 world champion in pair skating Tai Babilonia criticized the American television show Today for their article about Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva. Earlier, the Today website published material about Valieva's exhibition based on the TV series Wednesday. Dear Today Show, please take this down. This is a blatant insult to our U.S. Olympic figure skating team, Babilonia tweeted in the comments to the article, adding the hashtag #SupportCleanAthletes. In February, at the 2022 Olympics in Beijing, it became known that Valieva passed a doping test for trimetazidine. Because of this, the award ceremony following the results of the team tournament, in which Russia placed first and the United States placed second, did not take place. Sambo 70 president Renat Laishev criticized the former American figure skater Tai Babilonia, who asked to remove the article about Kamila Valieva from the Today Show website. You can call it an example of Russophobia, the act of this former figure skater. This name is stupid, cultureless hooliganism. It is an envy of talent, skill, and beauty, because they can't be as strong as us. They do not know how to take revenge on us. The more calm and confident we are in all industries, the more it infuriates them. They want to see us as Neanderthals. They think like this: they're a highly developed nation, and suddenly someone else dares to claim a higher place. Therefore, they have a path to nowhere in life, said Laishev, the epitome of calm. Producer Yana Rudkovskaya said that figure skater Alexandra Trusova recovered from an illness that caused her to withdraw from the Russian Championships in Krasnoyarsk. Trusova performed at the premiere of the ice show of two-time Olympic champion Evgeny Plushenko, the Snow Maiden. Plushenko himself could not take part due to illness. Mark Kondratyuk, who previously had back problems, also takes part in the show. Well, silver medalist of the 2022 Olympics in figure skating, Alexandra Trusova thanked the fans for their support after the premiere of the Evgeny Plushenko's show, The Snow Maiden. Earlier, due to illness, the skater missed the Russian Championships, which was held in Krasnoyarsk from December 22nd to the 25th. Thank you for your support, for your love. It was an amazing show. You supported me so much. Thank you for your support when I was sick. I really wanted to perform at the Russian Championship for you. It did not work out. I am very pleased with your words, your videos. I read everything. Thank you very much. I will try to skate and make you happy, said Trusova. Producer Yana Rudkovskaya spoke about the records set at the premiere of Evgeny Plushenko's show, The Snow Maiden. Today, we broke the European and world record for the number of participants in one ice show. The previous record also belonged to us, 120 people. Today, there were 139 ballet dancers, those who sang, as well as figure skaters. Nobody in the world has done this. I want to thank the honored artist of Russia, Sergei Filin, for the production. Today, Sasha is the only girl in the history of world figure skating who has done pair elements in figure skating, dance elements, flew, and also performed on point at the same time, said Rudkovskaya. She has stated that she and Evgeny Plushenko will continue to incorporate extreme elements into their shows. Today, at the premiere of the ice show, The Snow Maiden, Sasha Trusova descended from the ceiling above the ice without protection. If Sasha does something, then she is the first. She was the first to fly from the ceiling. She learned to dance on point shoes. She learned how to do a double throw. Sasha, Russian rocket. I'm proud of her. In my show, no one jumps doubles. I know they criticize me that Zhenya Semenenko fell in our show, but to come and watch skaters skate in a circle, you can look at me. I also know how to skate in a circle. Our shows will always be extreme, said Rudkovskaya. Well, this season, the Russian figure skating establishment has turned on Sasha Trusova. Following her outburst at the Olympic Games, Trusova took a break from training and competition for several months when she took part in shows and professional appearances, including a televised long jump, hockey games, and several other activities. This fall, Sasha removed the Channel 1 emblem from her warm-up jacket. First Channel is the primary broadcaster of figure skating in Russia and has long been associated with Team tutberidze. Well, First Channel released more information about the situation with Trusova that has been rumored for several months. According to First Channel, the father of figure skater Alexandra Trusova demanded that Channel 1 prohibit Alexei Yagudin and Alexandra Trusova from commenting on the performances of her daughter, medalists of the Beijing Olympic Games, because they criticized her performances. So the famous coach said that such an athlete wants to speed on all rotations, and Yagudin said in an interview that he made a mark about the purity of Sasha's skating. Her father, Vyacheslav, took the professional remarks to heart so much that he decided to act legally. He put forward the conditions for Channel 1. Alexandra will participate in additional filming, including interviews and training, but only if Tarasova and Yagudin do not comment on Trusova's performances at the competition. He also asked to be removed from all events with Trusova in any capacity. The leadership of the first refused to agree to these conditions, after which the channel's logo disappeared from Sasha's warm-up jacket. Alexandra Trusova's agent, Alexei Nikolaev, responded to Channel 1's statements about the figure skater's father allegedly putting forward a number of requirements for the channel to appoint commentators and presenters with her participation. As for the launch campaign against Sasha and her parents, the comment will be very simple. Firstly, in civilized conditions, when the parties are negotiating the conclusion or extension of the contractual relationship, they usually, such as professional norms, refrain from any specific comments, not to mention personal attacks. In this case, everything happened exactly the opposite. In my opinion, there is a clear adherence to one controversial recommendation of the PR classic: whoever lied first, he won. Secondly, neither Sasha herself nor her father, especially her mother, would ever allow, I am sure, to present demands that carefully selected media reported with enviable persistence. The reason is in the palm of your hand, and her parents are honest, principled, well-mannered, and most importantly, professional people who know the state of affairs in domestic figure skating to the smallest detail. They would never stoop to such démarches. And besides, any thesis thrown into the press must be documented, and no statements on the mentioned issue from the Trusovas were noticed, and there could not be any. But if in this case the other side goes to transfer the business conversation to a personal plane, then we can note the key role in the failure of the negotiations of Olga Chernovitsova, and above all, her rather fresh but quite expected interpretation of the position that no actions and statements of the parties should damage the image and professional reputation of each other. The reasons for this approach have yet to be sorted out against the backdrop of a difficult situation in the world, but there is an attempt to solve some of our own problems behind the backs of respected professionals. And thirdly, I'm afraid that in this case we are dealing with the so-called abandoned bride syndrome. Sasha's contract with Channel 1 expired, and the parties could not agree. Sasha has chosen a different media partner. This is her right. On such occasions, again in civilized terms, both parties thank each other for their cooperation and wish each other success in the future. But apparently this does not happen everywhere, and somewhere a disappointed bride runs to the party committee and demands the return of the groom. And if he has already created another family, then he tries to pour mud on him. Well, we have already gone through this in our history. True, if earlier it was perceived as a tragedy, now this story is more of a comedic farce. Well, it seems that Match TV is officially going to be aligned with Sasha Trusova and that they have formed a contract. Previously, it had long been suspected that Match TV had a source from the Trusov camp prior to the Olympic season when Trusova was injured, and Match TV was the one reporting about the injury while First Channel and other outlets remained silent. The general producer of Match TV, Alexandra Trusova, explained why figure skating is not broadcast on the channel. One of the most popular sports is figure skating. Why don't you have it on your channel? This is a more female audience. We don't have so many of them on the channel. Therefore, now figure skating is not the top priority. At the same time, Alexandra Trusova has begun to cooperate with Match TV. How did it happen? we are trying to make our athletes more visible in the media. The first such experience was with Veronika Stepanova, an Olympic champion in skiing. She writes columns on our website and often appears on our air. The next experiment turned out with Sasha Trusova. Of course, to develop Russian athletes in the media is also our task. Well, Trusova has been under immense criticism this season as she has not been in the same form that we saw at the Olympic Games, which was widely criticized by Russian journalist and Olympic champion Alena Vaidzohovskaya. There's also a blog on Sports.ru about the season of Sasha Trusova. This was written by Maria Selenkova. Alexandra Trusova remained in the sport after the 2022 Olympics, but spends a crumpled season. She changed her coach and programs. She withdrew from the nationals due to illness, but she immediately performs in a show. What if Sasha, according to the famous Beijing quote, is no longer interested in figure skating as before? They say 1. Trusova is the only figure skater from the golden trio of TSHK, or the AAA, as it was known in America, who continues her career with emphasis. Anna Sherbakova found herself in Ice Age and speaks very casually about a possible return. Alyona Kosternaya is struggling with injuries and is increasingly looking towards pair skating. But Trusova's season cannot be called complete. Almost a year ago, Sasha gave out the already legendary, "I don't want anything to do else in figure skating. Never in my life. Never. I hate this sport. I will never go out on the ice again." And the performances at the end of 2022 seem to indirectly confirm this is not just a breakdown to defeat, but an important point after which the relationship between Trusova and figure skating will not be the same. At the end of September, Sasha came to the test skates of the national team as part of the Eteri tutberidze group. There she performed a short program to the blues song, "I Put a Spell on You," and she immediately explained, "A decent form is very, very far away. It's a matter of injury. I'm not in full shape right now. I have a back injury. I have hardly skated. I decided to perform for the sake of the fans, so as not to upset them." Sasha did not enter the free program. She withdrew, citing back pain. Later, Daniil Gleikenhaus and Eteri tutberidze admitted that they were not ready to take Trusova out for the short program either, but the student insisted. A week later, Trusova left the tutberidze group and moved to Svetlana Sokolovskaya. Among the reasons for the breakup is the too heavy training regimen at Hrustalny. Sasha was already preparing for their first competition at CSKA. Choreographer Nikita Mikhailov staged 2 new programs, and Sokolovskaya helped to prepare the content. As a result, Trusova performed at 2 stages of the Russian Grand Prix series. In Sochi, she made a mistake in both programs, a step out on the cascade in the short program, and a fall from the quadruple Lutz in the free skate. In terms of a total, not only tutberidze's student, Idilia Petrosyan, finished ahead of her, but also the leader of the Sokolovskaya group, Sofia Samodelkina. At the stage in Samara, again, mistakes occurred. She popped the axle in the short program and fell from the quad. So this season, Trusova is still without quads in competitions. There were successful attempts in training and warm-up before the competitions, but the quadlets did not work out in performances. Sasha has already taken silver from Samara, again losing to Samodelkina. That's it. Trusova didn't perform anymore this season, although she remains the most discussed figure skater in Russia. First, because of her departure from tutberidze, then because of a conflict with Channel 1, and now because of her withdrawal from tournaments. A week after the Samara Grand Prix, information appeared that Trusova would not perform at the Russian Jumping Championship, so the tournament was left without a figure skater who, until recently, was called the Queen of Quads. It's difficult to compare with last year's schedule, but nevertheless, by the end of 2021, Trusova had full-flown test skates, 3 competitive starts, 1 where she had to withdraw due for injury, and she was preparing for the European Championship and the Olympic Games. At the main start of the season, Sasha was still expected. Due to the lack of international tournaments, the Russian Championship acquired additional significance. There are no more serious competitions this season. Trusova flew to Krasnoyarsk, and she went to the draw in a purple suit, and then withdrew. On Friday night, on the eve of the short program, her temperature rose to 39.4 degrees Celsius. According to Sokolovskaya, they even called a doctor. And a photo of Sasha's thermometer immediately appeared on social networks. But the situation is still strange. And it's not even that instead of an exclusive about the withdrawal on Match TV, where Trusova has a contract, a text about Sasha's dogs is released. And what happened the day after the free skate? On Sunday morning, Elizaveta Tuktamisheva posted a photo from the breakfast of the national team. On it, the skaters were smiling and having fun. Among them is Sasha, who suffered from a high temperature just 2 days before. In this photo, of course, nothing is said about Trusova's condition. Perhaps she still felt weak. Perhaps the symptoms of the disease had not yet passed. There are much more questions about Sasha's performance in the show. Already on December 28th, she is on the ice of Evgeny Plushenko's performance, The Snow Maiden. Only 5 days have passed since the short programs in Krasnoyarsk. In general, over the past year, it was easier to see Trusova in the show than in competitions. In the spring and summer, she performed in the Union of Champions of Plushenko. She toured the cities of Russia from Sochi to Ryazan, from Gubkin to Nizhny Novgorod. At the end of the summer, I attended the presentation of the hockey SKA in St. Petersburg. In a short break between the stages of the Grand Prix, she lit up Plushenko's anniversary show, 35 Years on Ice. Together with Kondratyuk, she showed an exciting number. Without any insurance, they rose above the arena and circled in the circus lounge. In mid-December, I looked at the First Channel Hockey Cup, and she showed a short program. Now Sasha has New Year's shows from December 28th to January 3rd, the Snow Maiden in Moscow, and January 4th to the 6th, Swan Lake in St. Petersburg. Will we see Trusova on competitive ice this season? There are not so many big tournaments ahead. On January 21st to the 22nd, the First Channel Cup will be held in Moscow. Perhaps due to disagreements with First Channel, she will miss the competition. Thus, only the final of the Grand Prix on March 3rd to 5th remains. Sasha was selected to compete there. And the tournament of show programs on March 18th to the 19th. Maybe at least that will attract Trusova, because she has the richest experience in shows this season. Well, Alexei Zheleznyakov, master of the Boogie Woody and hatchet man for Team tutberidze, has spoken out. The choreographer of the group of eteri tutberidze, Alexei Zheleznyakov, commented on the performance of Kamila Valieva at the Russian Nationals and spoke about the withdrawal of Sasha Trusova from competitions. He said millions of girls see themselves in Kamila. Now she is growing and turning into a woman. At the same time, she's not like Sasha Trusova. She didn't run away from the Nationals. I think it is true. Sasha gave up. What fever? I am begging you, let's be honest. I don't believe this story about feeling ill because of a fever. I think Sasha was scared of the competition. She's just not in good physical shape, and that's all. Kamila is my hero. She was under pressure because of Olympic affairs, and she did not break. She trains and works. Good girl. Glory didn't break her. She comes to my lessons and dances with full strength. When you perform at the international level and hundreds of thousands of people place their hopes in you and at the burden of responsibility on you, you must not let them down. At the same time, you are in a transitional age. You gain weight from water when you don't eat anything, but still put on weight. This is terrible. Over the 15 years of work, I have brought up several generations. But what fascinates me about Valieva is that she never gives up. She is a shining diamond. Well, Yekaterina Bobrova also spoke and shared her opinion about Sasha Trusova withdrawing from the Russian championship. Trusova fell ill even earlier. She came down with a temperature of 39 degrees Celsius, and many communicated closely with her. The question arose that she would not infect anyone. It seems they wanted to come to the Russian championship. She flew to Krasnoyarsk, but did not perform in the end. You have a difficult season. You need to prove something from time to time in competitions, to yourself, to the judges, to the fans, to the federation, and so on. When there is a high temperature and illness, it is very difficult and dangerous to skate, because it is an incredible burden on the heart. We always looked at the state, how important the start, and how important it is to skate or take care. She could skate. Maybe not bad, but was it worth it? given that we are not selected anywhere, so that after the week in lying down and with some complications, therefore, the doctors decided she would not perform. Does it make sense to go to the moral and strong-willed, panting and crawling with triples and not taking one of the first 3 places? If you go out, then you have to fight for the highest places. We wish Sasha health and a return to the ice without complications, said Bobrova in the Skating Podcast. It is interesting that figure skater Yekaterina Bobrova referenced competing while sick to be dangerous for the heart. At the 2016 European Championships, Bobrova tested positive for the heart drug meldonium, which was allegedly administered to her under the direction of Dr. Philip Shevetsky, the same doctor who oversaw the health of Kamila Valieva. Meldonium was added to the World Anti-Doping Agency list of bad substances effective January 1st, 2016, because of evidence of its use by athletes with the intention of enhancing performance. It was on list of WADA's drugs to be monitored in 2015, which was when Elizaveta Tuktamisheva admitted to taking it during her golden season, which appeared almost too good to be true. The skater dominated the field with a speed and number of competitions not seen before or after. It took several seasons for her to return to her level of performance, which coach Alexei Mishin admits to being confused by in his latest memoir. A high prevalence of meldonium use by athletes in sport was demonstrated by the laboratory findings at the Baku 2015 European Games. 13 medalists or competition winners were taking meldonium at the time of the Baku Games. Meldonium use was detected in athletes competing in 15 of the 21 sports during the Games. Most of the athletes taking meldonium withheld the information of their use from anti-doping authorities by not declaring it on their doping control forms as they should have. Only 23 of the 662 athletes tested declared the personal use of meldonium. However, 66 of the total 762 of the athlete urine samples analyzed during the Games and during pre-competition tested positive for meldonium. On March 7, 2016, former world number 1 tennis player Maria Sharapova announced that she had failed a drug test in Australia due to the detection of meldonium. She said that she had been taking the drug for 10 years for various health reasons and had not noticed that it had been banned. On June 8, 2016, she was suspended from playing tennis for 2 years by the International Tennis Federation. Earlier that same year, Russian ice dancer Yekaterina Bobrova announced that she had also tested positive for meldonium at the 2016 European Figure Skating Championships. Bobrova said she was shocked about the test result because she had been made aware of meldonium's addition to the banned list and had been careful to avoid products containing bad substances. More than 170 failed tests by athletes were identified in a relatively brief period after the ban on meldonium was imposed on January 1, 2016, almost all of which were from Eastern European countries. Many of the early cases were dropped when athletes claimed that they had ceased use in 2015. The drug meldonium, under its trade name Mildronate, is available on the website drdoping.com, a Russian website which lists the drug Mildronate under the category of physical energy. It is available in 250 milligrams, 500 milligrams, and as an injection, which Grigory Rodchenkov claims is preferred for performance enhancement due to absorption into the body. Mildronate is one of Latvia's most exported products. DrDoping.com claims that Mildronate improves mental processes, memory, learning, focus, concentration, processing of information. It reduces fatigue, it increases motivation and alertness. It improves athletic training and competitive performance. It improves microcirculation and oxygen delivery. Sports people are advised to take 500 to 1,000 milligrams twice daily, 40 to 60 minutes prior to workouts. The duration of the preparatory period is 14 to 21 days, and it's advised to continue taking the drug during competitions. WADA classes the drug as a metabolic modulator, just as it does insulin. Metabolic modulators are classified as S4 substances according to the WADA banned substance list. These substances have the ability to modify how some hormones accelerate or slow down different enzymatic reactions in the body. In this way, these modulators can block the body's conversion of testosterone into estrogen, which is necessary for females. On April 13, 2016, it was reported that WADA had issued updated guidelines allowing less than 1 microgram per milliliter of meldonium for tests done prior to March 1, 2016. The agency cited that preliminary tests showed that it could take weeks or months for the drug to leave the body. Well, curiously, also listed on drdoping.com under the physical energy category is trimetazidine. And when the Russians appealed to the CAS at the Olympics, they stated that Valieva would have had to have ingested a full 35 milligram dose of trimetazidine 5 to 7 days before competition, given the trace amount ingested into her body. This was used as their defense. Curiously, trimetazidine is only available in the 20 milligram dose on drdoping.com, and one of the highlighted benefits is that the half-life is 4.5 to 5 hours, and if you do the math, the trace amount would have appeared in her body in under 28 hours. If you have forgotten about the details of the Kamila Valieva doping scandal, here's a summary from Everyday Health. The article is "What is the heart drug behind the Russian skating sample? An expert weighs in." The Olympic figure skating star Kamila Valieva tested positive in December for trimetazidine, a medication banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency. What is this mystery drug? The 15-year-old Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva had already made headlines at the Olympics in Beijing for landing 2 quadruple jumps on February 7th, a feat no other female competitor has ever pulled off at the Games. Then came the news that a drug test she'd taken in advance of a competition in December 2021 showed signs of trimetazidine, a heart medication that has been banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency since 2014. The test also identified 2 other heart medications in her system that are not on the ban list. As reported by the New York Times, Valieva allegedly told the Court of Arbitration for Sport that her grandfather was prescribed trimetazidine for a heart condition and may have inadvertently exposed her to the drug. If you remember, this is where we had learned that Grandpa Valiev would have had to have thrown up his trimetazidine into a glass of water for Valieva to have accidentally ingested it. The arbitrators ruled that Valieva could continue to compete in the Games, with the International Olympic Committee announcing that she would not be eligible for any medals until her case was resolved. Valieva went on to win the women's short program on February 15th and came in 4th in the long program on February 17th. While it's not possible to predict how the doping investigation would play out, here's what's known about the drug at the heart of the controversy and some input from a sports medicine doctor on whether this drug can give athletes an edge. What is trimetazidine? Trimetazidine has widely been used in some European countries since the 1970s, but it is not approved in the United States. Doctors prescribe the drug to treat chest pain when more standard medications, such as aspirin or beta blockers, aren't working. Physicians also prescribe TMZ to treat ringing in the ears, tinnitus, dizziness, vertigo, and some vision disturbances. Angina occurs when arteries fail to deliver enough blood to a part of the heart that needs oxygen. Though the pain often goes away with rest, angina is usually a warning sign of heart disease. Though some studies have shown that trimetazidine works well as an adjunct to or alternative to standard treatments for angina, there have been very few randomized, double-blind trials of TMZ, and studies that do exist have had conflicting results. The medication can cause side effects such as restless legs and other movement issues similar to symptoms of Parkinson's disease. Because of these side effects, in 2012, the European Medicines Agency recommended that doctors limit the use of TMZ for angina and stop prescribing it to treat other conditions. Trimetazidine helps the heart work more efficiently by making energy easier to access. Normally, the heart gets the energy it needs first by oxidizing fatty acids, then by utilizing glucose as energy, a faster and more efficient process. What trimetazidine does is decrease reliance on the slower fatty acids path and encourage more immediate glucose use, increasing the heart's efficiency. This is helpful for people with angina whose hearts may be deprived of adequate oxygen. In a study published in a 2018 issue of Advances in Therapy, patients with recently diagnosed angina had fewer instances of chest pain and were also able to increase their walking distance after being treated with the drug. Trimetazidine is thought to give endurance athletes a boost because it helps the heart work more efficiently. TMZ enhances the body's ability to utilize oxygen under stress. Theoretically, that could provide an athlete in competition under physical stress with an advantage, enabling them to utilize more oxygen than they normally would, says Dr. Onks, a primary care sports medicine physician at Penn State Health, Milton Hershey Medical Center in Hershey, Pennsylvania. That's precisely why it has been banned, though a connection between TMZ and improved performance is still largely theoretical. All Olympic athletes are looking for an edge, said Dr. Onks. When you're talking about a few extra seconds in the air or a microseconds difference in a race, any advantage can be beneficial. Unlike some other banned performance-enhancing drugs like beta blockers, TMZ does its work without affecting heart rate or blood pressure, explains Onks. Beta blockers, on the other hand, can slow heart rate and lower blood pressure, obviously a negative for athletes. As for Valieva, Onks agrees that a clear violation of doping rules occurred. There is no reason for a healthy 15-year-old to be on this medication, he says. Onks does think the drug might help an athlete get to gold. The difference between first and second place at this level can be so infinitesimal that it's not measurable, says Dr. Onks. We'll just never know the role TMZ might play in terms of that edge. Well, it is interesting that the doctor chosen to defend Valieva for the CAS was a doctor who actually works with the Russian soccer team. And that doctor had actually published a paper before the Olympics, just after the Russian nationals, saying that TMZ could be used in healthy individuals, but it didn't give an advantage. And that doctor had actually been chosen to defend Valieva. And it's interesting because this doctor was doing research that is often funded by the Russian Federal Biomedical Agency. That agency typically releases statements that say that certain drugs shouldn't be banned by WADA. But you have to wonder, why is the Russian Biomedical Agency financing studies on drugs that are banned by WADA for use in athletes? What do you make of the USOPC's statements on the reversal of Russian participation at the upcoming Olympic Games? Will the sports world just allow Russia back into the Games? And if so, will the CAS ruling on Kamila Valieva truly be independent? Or will behind-the-scenes pressure prevail? Would the Olympic brand be able to withstand Russia's return to the Olympic Games? Would it be able to withstand it if Kamila Valieva and the Russian Olympic team were to be awarded team gold medals for figure skating from Beijing 2022 at the 2024 Paris Olympic Games if their defense prevails that she was a protected person and not subject to a strong burden of proof of not taking a contaminated substance? Or could some sort of quiet negotiation take place where Russia returns under neutral colors but is made to forfeit the figure skating gold to the United States? Naturally, the Russian Olympic Committee would exclaim outrage in public, as they have prior to the 2016, 2018, 2020, and 2022 Olympics. Yet the extensive outrage on social media never prevented them from participating at the Games. What do you predict? Please comment below. I'll see you on the next As the Blade Turns, where we discuss details of Russian research into performance enhancement. Thank you.